Welcome to the Mother Earth News and Friends podcast. One of the many beautiful things about nature is biodiversity. More specifically, the diverse array of poultry breeds. It's becoming increasingly important to pay attention to the breeds that are struggling and finding ways to prevent losing them altogether. In this episode, a friend of the podcast, Jeannette Beranger of the Livestock Conservancy, returns to talk about rare and heritage poultry breeds and which ones are on the Conservancy's conservation priority list. This is Mother Earth News. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, Brinzea, that's BRINSEA, Chick Incubation Specialists. They've been focusing on egg incubator design continuously since 1976, resulting in a wide range of egg incubators, chick brooders, and incubation accessories. They offer unparalleled practicality, reliability, superior hatch rates, and healthy chicks. Innovation you can trust.
Good day, everyone, and we appreciate you for joining us on another exciting Mother Earth News and Friends podcast. I am Kenny Coogan, and joining me today is Jeannette Beranger, a Senior Program Manager for the Livestock Conservancy. At Mother Earth News, for 50 years and counting, we have been dedicated to conserving our planet's natural resources while helping you conserve your financial resources. Today, we are going to learn about endangered and rare heritage breeds of poultry. Jeannette Beranger has been with the Livestock Conservancy since 2005 and uses her knowledge to plan and implement conservation programs, conduct field research, and advise farmers in their endeavors with rare breeds. She is the co-author of the best-selling book, An Introduction to Heritage Breeds. At home, she maintains a heritage breeds farm with a focus on rare breed chickens. Welcome to the podcast, Jeannette.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. And I think I've been interviewing you for Backyard Poultry and Mother Earth News for about 10 years now, but this is the first video interview.
Yeah.
So the Livestock Conservancy's mission is to protect America's endangered livestock and poultry breeds from extinction. Endangered categories include critical, threatened, watch, recovering, and study. So Jeannette, can you explain what those labels mean?
Sure. So these are the ways we rate populations. Critical is typically with poultry, it varies between livestock and poultry. For poultry, critical is going to be fewer than 500 breeding birds in the U.S. with 5 or fewer primary breeding flocks, which are about 50 birds or more, and an estimated global population of less than 1,000. So that's obviously the highest level of priority for us. And then we move down to threatened, which means fewer than 1,000 breeding birds and global population of less than 5,000. Then we have the watch category, which is fewer than 5,000 birds in the US and less than 10,000 globally. And then once they get past that limit, we have what's called recovering, where their numbers are pretty good, but things can slide really easily. And so we like to move the breeds into recovering and make sure that they're going to be okay for a few years before we take them off the list completely. And we do have a study category where we'll put some breeds in that we want to take a closer look at because we want to know, are they the actual breed they say they are, or are they a modern recreation of something that no longer exists? Because our business is genetic conservation. And so just because an animal looks like a breed from a genetic standpoint, they may not be the same thing. Now, I'll give you a good example is the Lamona chicken. The Lamona chicken, was developed, and like I think in the 1940s or 50s. they all but disappeared. And the birds we have today, although they look exactly like Lamonas, I mean, there's some really good Lamonas out there. Genetically, they're not the original breed. They're a modern recreation that's done a really good job getting birds to look like that breed. But from a genetic sense, they're just not the original breed anymore. So some of the other criteria, I'm talking about if it's a true genetic breed, and the other thing is that they've had a long history in the United States. And typically we say, prior to 1925, and then there are some exceptions, like recently created animals like the Lamona. They were created after 1925, but the animals from which they were created no longer exists. And so that was of interest to us. The other thing is if it's a recent import, there are a lot of funky chickens and other animals coming into the US recently. And although they're rare, they're a recent import. And a lot of times they're doing just fine in the country of origin. We have limited resources, so we have to keep the list to a reasonable number of breeds. That's why we've got kind of this methodology. And so where a recent import might be considered for the conservation priority list is, like, for instance, Arapawa goats. They're a recent import. They came in the 90s, and they're rare where they come from. And because they've been doing so well here in the US, 50% of the world's population of Arapawas is now in the United States, which means our population is pertinent to the global population. So that's the other reason we would include a breed, is if the population here has pertinence to the global population. And in this case, it does, because the population's not that secure in New Zealand. And so we have to take some responsibility to make sure they don't disappear here. Does that make sense?
Yes. How do you find out those numbers? Do you rely on farmers to self-report how many birds or livestock they have?
Yeah, it depends on the species. For livestock breeds, a lot of time we get registration numbers, and that kind of gives you a sense of how many breeding animals are out there. We're also only counting breeding animals. We're not counting pets. We're not counting neutered animals. We're talking about animals that are contributing to the population, because there's no point in counting the others. So for livestock, it's like registration numbers. If there's no registry, then yeah, you got to call the farmers and try and get a sense of how many animals are out there. For rabbits, we have show numbers, and the numbers of rabbits that are showing up at shows gives us an indication on trends with certain rabbits. And so that is a useful calculator. And then with poultry, it gets a little more complicated because there are no registries, and we're not able to get show numbers because a lot of shows still are being conducted on paper, which I think is crazy, but it is what it is.
This podcast is being recorded in 2023.
Yes. So what we do is an online form, and we just get it out to as many people as possible. We send a call out to Mother Earth News, to the American Poultry Association, American Bantam Association, the breed clubs, any place we can think. We try to blast it out there and get as many folks as possible to participate. And poultry census is really hard. It can take over a year to get a reasonable census. And then in the end, people are like, what about my birds? I never heard about the census. And I'm like, I know we're never going to get exact numbers, but we can get a pretty good idea of what's out there. And we not only count private individuals, but we also count university populations, hatchery populations. So we're fortunate that we've been building good relationships with hatcheries to the point where they're willing to share the information. And so it's all these things combined that help us determine the status of a breed. And as I said, poultry is probably the trickiest because you're never going to count all of them. But if you can get a good idea of what's going on out there, then it can help direct you on what things need help. I'll give you a good example with like Malays. We were only able to find 15 private flocks of Malays. 15 and only maybe approximately 134 breeding birds. So that puts up a red flag for us. It's really concerning, and no hatchery carries Malays. So, these private individuals, it's all in their hands. It's information like that helps guide where we're going to put our energies in. There are others that are doing really, really well. We've had some that have moved to recovering and even some that have graduated. Like this year, one of the breeds that graduated is the Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock, because of the backyard chicken movement and some large breeding flocks that are out there, they're doing pretty darn good. They finally have been able to come out of recovering, and they're going to graduate this year. So
Very good.
that's pretty exciting.
Later in the podcast, we'll talk more about updates. How often is the conservation priority list for poultry updated? And are all of the groups updated, or is it breed by breed updated?
We review the CPL twice a year. We have our big sit down, let's go over every single breed in the winter time, usually around January, February. And then the new CPL will come out in July. And then usually we have a mid-year review where, we talk about any kind of progress or anything more that we've learned about any of the breeds within the list. And it's not quite as intense a meeting as the winter one, where we have to go through every single breed, which is like about 150, somewhere around there. It fluctuates, but the really cool thing, and I love this about our organization, is we really seem to have a good grasp of the pulse of what's happening with each of these breeds. I might not know what's happening with one breed, but one of my colleagues probably does. And between all of us, when we sit at the table, we're like, well, okay, what's going on with Anconas? And, I might be able to answer that because I talk with Ancona people all the time. And then other folks are maybe talking a lot more with Java people, or, some of the waterfowl people. And so, it's not an exact science because, like I said earlier, you can't count every single animal. But if you can get an idea of, is this a big population or is it not, that helps guide us. That's kind of how our work goes. And beyond the numbers, once animals are on the conservation priority list, we have a big job to do, and that's to try and stabilize the populations and organize the owners and breeders, and then help them develop markets so that these animals become desirable for others to get involved with. And the latest project that I've been involved with was the Crevcore chicken project. And they were pretty close to being gone about 10 years ago. We started small, tried to figure out what bloodlines were left out there, gathered them up, and then started cranking out chicks, and then doing really good selection on the animals to get them back to breed standard and learn more about them. A lot of these poultry breeds have very little written about them, which stuns me. There's some that, there are reams of paper on it, like the Plymouth Rock or Rhode Island Red. Yeah, you're going to find tons of stuff on them, but stuff like the Crevcore, the La Flèche, or, some of the imported breeds that weren't developed here, even in their home country, there's not a lot written about them. When you get involved with the breed, I really encourage people to document what they're finding. How much does a newly hatched chick weigh? What's the average weight of eggs? What color are the eggs? What color are the chicks? How fast do they grow? How do they taste? All those things. It's just not written down for a lot of these breeds. And because we've been able to build numbers, get the breed back to breed standard weight, which I don't think anybody's seen in decades, and talk about the food qualities and the laying and the ins and outs of that breed to get people excited about it. And also the history a lot of times will grab people. Each of these breeds has a great story. And so if you can document that story, that helps you to build market and build interest. And I'm happy to say last year, we were able to graduate the Crevcore from critical to threatened, because we've got a growing breeding population and people really excited about Cref cores, which 10 years ago, nobody was talking about them except maybe the French. But even in France, they're super rare. I think we have more here now than there are in France.
Why is it important to track endangered, threatened, and non-threatened breeds? So basically, what's so great about heritage poultry breeds?
Well, it's the diversity. I mean, it's not rocket science. I think even a basic course in biology is going to teach you that diversity is really important for healthy biological systems. And for agriculture, one of the things that's really not paid attention to as much as it should be is biodiversity within the animals that we raise for our food. A majority of the chicken that you buy are hybrid chickens that are held by three poultry companies, and that's limited diversity. You can't reproduce those birds on your own farm, so you're completely dependent on somebody providing you chicks, which seems awfully boring for me. I want to breed my own animals and have a little bit of control over what it is that I'm bringing onto my farm. And when you're completely dependent on, and there's nothing wrong with hatchery birds, but if you're completely dependent on that for your resource, then it is what it is. You don't have any control. And if you wanted to select for better temperament or better mothering skills or something like that, you're going to have to do that on your own. Preliminary stuff that we've started looking into with chickens in particular is looking at the DNA of heritage breeds or non-commercial breeds and compare them to some of the commercial birds. And what we're finding, even in the part of the DNA that represents immune function, there are things within these heritage birds that are completely non-existent in commercial birds. So can we identify what exactly that is? Is it disease resistance? Is it parasite resistance? Is it something else we haven't imagined? But what we do know is it's non-existent in commercial poultry. Until we know what that is, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you lose these breeds. And some of these breeds have been around for hundreds or even longer, many, many years. And it's going to take that long to recreate that animal. And so you have to look at every breed as an important genetic piece of agriculture as a whole. And so our job is to try and conserve that bit of diversity. These breeds are rare because, they got outcompeted by commercial birds. Still doesn't mean they shouldn't be around. Some of these breeds never are going to take off and be the next broiler chicken for the masses, but maybe they have resistance to a particular disease that's wiping out commercial birds. That might be something important to keep around. So,
Are there other differences between heritage breeds and commercial breeds other than disease resistance and how long it took to develop them?
well, that's a good question. We're actually working towards answering. We've just spent the past 3 years, no, actually 4 or 5 years now, collecting DNA from a wide array of birds, both in the private sector, the university sector, and commercial sector. We're starting to take a look at the distances between those breeds and how different they really are. And even some of the breeds, we've collected multiple bloodlines. And for instance, like the birds that we're finding in Canada have been isolated up there for so long that they're very different from the same breed that we find here in the US. They're all the same breed. It's just because of separation for so long. And we know they weren't crossbred up there. And the ones we pulled, we're fairly certain they weren't crossbred. It's just they've diverged. That's, an interesting piece of that puzzle. But we're hoping that we'll be able to publish something, at least on our website, and show folks how the different breeds relate to each other. And we're graphing everything on a 3D graph, which is going to be really cool to kind of play with on the website. So,
How do you see heritage breeds helping our future? Is it the sole fact that they provide biodiversity and disease and temperature resistance?
the thing that's most important is that there's still a resource for you to be able to raise your own food. also equipped, depending on the right breed for the right place, they're equipped to face the challenges that I don't care what part of the political spectrum you're on. The fact is, climate's changing for really rough weather or extended heat, extended drought, or wet conditions. A lot of these breeds are much better able to cope with that than commercial animals. They're really important to have around. There's a really interesting story out of archaeology about chickens at the San Diego Presidio, which is the early Spanish settlement there. And they found chicken bones at the Presidio. They've studied them quite a bit. And the archaeologists all point to the fact that if that colony had not had chickens, it would not have survived because they were cut off from supplies coming up from Mexico. And if it were not for the chickens, the settlement would never have survived, which is pretty stunning conclusion because archaeologists are very hesitant to make conclusions. They want real facts. And they had large fowl and they had bantams to hatch the eggs of the large fowl. And they were able to hatch their own birds and have eggs and meat, and they survived, which is pretty cool.
How can listeners find and raise poultry breeds that are on these lists?
Well, on our website, which is livestockconservancy.org, you can find the conservation priority list there to see what breeds are listed. You also have breeders and products directory and a classifieds directory. You can find animals that way. First off, I should say that hatchery birds do have a place, and that if you're just getting started with the breed, that's not a bad place to start because you're not going to know 100% if the breed's going to work for you. Right place, right breed. And so study up on the breed you're thinking of getting and don't make the pick just because they're cool looking. You want to understand, are they meat birds? Are they egg birds? Are they dual purpose? Are they heat resistant? Are they cold resistant? Do they have friendly dispositions? Are they going to be good mothers, or are they just going to lay their egg and walk away? Those kind of things you ask yourself, and then you can whittle down to a small handful of breeds that might work for you. And then the very last question you ask yourself is, do they appeal to you? Because if they don't, well, that's end game. You'll never find a naked neck chicken on my farm, I can tell you that.
I will not
Sorry,
tell.
folks that have naked necks.
I was just going to say, I will not tell my naked neck chicken that you said that comment. And speaking of which, Jeannette, I live in the city limits. Should people raise rare heritage breeds if they can't have a rooster on their property and therefore can't breed the birds?
Oh, sure. Not every bird's meant to be a breeder. So you could source animals from the hatchery or go to a breeder and say, hey, I'm not planning on breeding. I just like some pullets. Because as a breeder, you're going to know who you're going to keep and who you're going to let go pretty early. If you really know your breed, by about 8 weeks to 12 weeks, you're going to pretty much know who you're going to keep or not. Maybe a little bit longer for some slower growing breeds. And that way you're providing a market for that breeder to get rid of their culls rather than just culling them and eating them. So that actually helps breeders by providing a market for their culls.
How can people support the Livestock Conservancy even if they can't raise the animals?
We have a lot of members that don't have animals, and a lot of them are foodies or just people that really support the mission. And so you can join as a member. It's $45 a year. You will be kept up to date on the cutting edge of livestock and poultry conservation. We stretch our bucks and do quite a bit with the resources we have. It's a great organization. I still can't believe I get paid to do what I do because I can, I'm a poultry snob and I just thoroughly enjoy the work, and it's meaningful work. So supporting this work is meaningful. Even if you don't think it's going to affect you personally, it does in the long run. You might not need us today, sometime in the future, because we saved a certain breed or two, it might make the difference.
How can people support heritage breeds outside of raising them themselves?
Use their products. There's all kinds of products that are available from certain breeds. Certainly chickens and poultry, they're good eating. Spend that extra money to buy a real heritage turkey on the holidays. You have to be really careful to make sure what you're getting is the real deal, because heritage has become kind of this buzzword now. And so people slap heritage onto something, and the consumer unknowingly buys something that is just a commercial animal that's been crossed with the heritage breed. So it's got a different color, but it's not the real deal. So if you buy a heritage turkey and it's got huge breasts, that's probably not a heritage bird, probably a cross, but it's being sold as heritage because maybe it's solid black or bronze or some other color, and the buyer is unaware. We see that a lot with chickens too. A lot of folks are doing pasture raised chicken with commercial broiler crosses that are red or black or what have you. And because they're not white and fat like Cornish crosses, people think, oh, it's a heritage bird. No, it's not. So yeah, so use the products and visit the farms. A lot of times they have agritourism, and you can come and visit farms and see what they're doing. So there's all kinds of ways you can support conserving the breeds.
Let's say I love the Dutch hookbill ducks,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's not a lot of them. And let's say I like really want to get into it and I want to get like 50 on my farm. Does the Livestock Conservancy provide funding or help find grants for a farmer who wants to really like invest their land and their time and resources into a breed?
We do have a microgrants program, but it's typically catered towards people that are already doing good work with breeds, and they're not typically given to people that want to get started in heritage breeds. Got to have some skin in the game. Got to prove that this isn't just something that's going to come and go, that you've been working with the breed for a little while. So say Dutch hookbills, you get a start in them, and then you realize, oh, I need to get some outside blood in. You can apply for a grant, and that could help you source ducklings that you need to bring in from Oregon. That's going to cost you an arm and a leg to bring over. Yeah, we can fund things like that. Or if you want to expand your breeding program and need to purchase more fencing or bring electricity out to your pens, that'll be a game changer for your breeding program. We had a really successful grant recipient last year that built breeding pens for her cotton patch geese. And prior to having those pens, she only had maybe 40 or 50% survival rate in her goslings, because the adults are just so busy fighting each other. They crush the goslings or kill each other's goslings. And this past year, everything that hatched survived. That's a game changer. And just by building a few more pens. So that's the kind of thing we're looking to fund. The microgrants are now open, and we're taking applications until August 2023, until August 31st. They're grants up to $2,000. If you go to our webpage to resources, you'll see the microgrant program. I will tell you, almost every grant recipient has watched the video. So if you're going to apply, watch the video, take notes, and the video walks you through what judges are looking for in a good grant. They're not hard to apply for. Don't let that intimidate you, but do make sure that you are working with one of the breeds that's on our conservation priority list.
Very good. We're going to take a quick break in our conversation to hear a word from our sponsor. And when we return, we will learn which heritage breeds of poultry have had a change in their status.
Brinzy products are designed to be long-lasting and energy efficient. Their advanced series incubators and brooders feature the latest state-of-the-art digital control systems, providing instant readings of temperature and humidity to ensure successful hatches and healthy chicks. Check out Brinzy incubators and more at brinzy.com. That's BRINSEA.com. And now back to our conversation with Jeannette.
Jeannette Beranger, a senior program manager for the Livestock Conservancy. So, Jeannette, what chicken breeds have had a status change in the past year, I suppose?
Yeah, so we just completed a poultry census recently, and we have a few changes that we're making. So if I go down the list here, The Ancona is one that's going to move from watch to threatened. Their numbers are down. We only found 33 private flocks out there, and there's not much in the way of hatchery birds out there. Another one, the ace eel, that's moving from threatened to critical. We only found a little over 10 flocks, and there are no eels in hatcheries. Another one, Brahmas are going to be graduating. Their numbers are doing very, very well. The other thing with the recent census we did, for the first time, we actually looked at color varieties too, which was really interesting. And there are some color varieties that seem to be gone. Buttercup is doing a little bit better. There's a lot of them showing up in hatcheries. And we had, I think because the Buttercup group has been so active lately, we found 34 private breeding flocks out there. So their numbers are doing a lot better between that and the hatchery population. Campine's one that is doing pretty well. They're going to move to threatened. One that's coming on the list that we hadn't had before is the Japanese bantam. We don't typically list bantam breeds except for old bantams that have no large fowl counterpart. And this is one. Japanese bantam was accepted into the APA in 1883. So they've been around here a long time. So they're moving into the watch category.
And why do you think the Japanese bantam landed on the list? Like, what do you think has happened recently?
Well, it's one that wasn't on our radar. We did a lot of talking with David Anderson, the former president of the APA, and he was the one that said, hey, there are several bantam breeds you need to look at to maybe consider. They're old, they've been around the US for a long time, and he's seeing their populations at shows aren't quite as big as they used to be. So yeah, we took a hard look at it, and if it fits, you put it in there. So Japanese bantam is coming. Jersey Giants are doing really well. They're going to move to recovering. Again, backyard chicken movement is really helping that particular breed.
Was the backyard chicken movement really spiked during COVID or just in the past 10 years?
I think the past 10 years, certainly there was a spike during COVID, but I think after everybody went back to work, a lot of the flocks went away. Yeah. That may have been a COVID bump, but that was about it. Minorcas are doing really well, I think largely because of hatchery populations. And hatcheries do have a part to play in this. One of the things that we're really interested in this DNA study is seeing how different hatchery birds are from the private populations. And although the hatchery birds may not meet APA standard, genetically, if they're the breed, they are the breed, just maybe not APA standard, but that's something we're hoping to answer with this DNA study. As I said earlier, Plymouth Rock's going to graduate. They're doing really, really well. Rhode Island White is going to be moving to watch. They seem to be doing okay. There's a very active group of breeders out there, so I think they're safely in watch. Another bantam that's coming on is the rose-comb bantam. There are very few of them out there. I know I see them in shows, but not tons of them out there. So that's a breed that's probably going to go into critical.
Can you talk about maybe the Japanese bantam and the rose-comb bantam? Like, what makes them special other than how cute they look?
Well, the Japanese bantam, the big challenge with them is they're short-legged birds. If you're breeding to breed standard, they are selected for short legs, which can be a little challenging when it comes to the males being able to breed the females. And I think because of that challenge, they're not the easiest breed to incubate and hatch out. I've not raised them myself, so I can't speak from experience, but I do know in talking with Japanese bantam breeders that that's one of the challenges. And both of them, the Japanese bantams and rose combs, I mean, they're basically created to be these beautiful little showbirds. And Japanese bantam in particular with that big fantail is just stunning to look at. And they're bred to pose for you. And if you just want pet chickens around, I'm sure you could find some culls from some of the breeders that are perfectly acceptable birds. Like I've got Seabright bantams at home that they're my traveling chickens. It's because they're little They're pretty and easy to manage because my Krebs, when you've got an 8-pound rooster and a 5.5-pound chicken, it's a lot of poop, a lot of space they need, whereas my seabrides. And I just bought culls, and they're perfectly lovely. And I say that they're culls, a really good seabright would be even smaller than what I've got. But that's all I needed. I'm not breeding them. I just want them for show to bring to events and things. So, but I think bantams, the challenge, although like with some of the game bantams, they probably don't have as much fertility issues. But I do know with the Japanese, that's one of the reasons why they're not quite as widespread. Another that's doing pretty well is the Sultan. They're going to be moving to threatened. I think that's definitely from backyard chicken movement. People like to have them. They're fancy and pretty. And then Yokohama is moving to threatened. And that's largely due to some folks in hatcheries doing some really good job with Yokohamas out there. So that's some of the changes with chickens. And I can move on to some of the other breeds. It's hard to keep this in my head. I got to have my Excel sheets here. It's a lot of breeds. So if we're moving on to ducks, one that's coming on, and this was another suggestion, taking a look at the East Indy, and that's something we never had on the list before, but they've been around here a long time, since 1874, and there are a lot of folks with a lot of call ducks, but not so much East Indy. So they're going to be coming on to the list actually in critical. The Buff Orpington duck is doing really, really well. They're going to be moving to watch. I think the hatcheries are cranking out quite a bit, and backyard duck eggs are a thing. People are really jumping on board with duck eggs. Otherwise, ducks have been fairly stable. One thing that we've decided to finally move out of study and into watch is the Australian spotted duck. Actually, no, they're critical. So this is another little bantam that was developed in the 1920s in Pennsylvania. Small population, less than 200, but there's some really dedicated people working with the Australian spotted. And I'm hoping one of the hatcheries picks up this breed and can build numbers too.
I mentioned Dave Holderried in another podcast. Of course, we all know about his stories guidebook about raising ducks and raising geese. Him and his wife retired a few years ago. Are there, not just for ducks and geese, but are there other farms currently, that have like a dozen or more turkey breeds or chicken breeds or duck breeds, or is that kind of going away and people are really focusing on one or two breeds now?
Yes and no. Like with Dave's birds, Metzer Farms actually got a lot of his breeding stock. And so he's kind of picking up the torch and running with it and doing a good job with it. And I think Dave still advises on selection of those breeds. That's good news. And then there's some other large scale folks. I know Frank Reese is with his Poultry Institute is starting to cultivate a new generation of breeders and training people on how to select for production in heritage birds. At least for ducks, things are kind of cruising okay. And as we move on to geese, everybody's pretty much cruising except Pomeranians. Pomeranians, we were only able to find about 35 private flocks out there. And with Gerald Donnelly passing up in Canada, he was a big breeder of them. We're moving them from threatened to critical. That was the only change in goose breeds.
Now, when you say there's 35 flocks, can a flock be just two birds?
Well, we did look at flock size. I can actually tell you, yeah, we got some great data out of this. And by the way, all the data is on our website, so you can take a look at some of the numbers. But for Pomeranians, there were, 25 flocks that were just 1 to 5 birds, 3 flocks that were 5 to 10, 2 flocks that were 10 to 15, 1 flock 15 to 20, 2 flocks that were 20 to 25, and 2 flocks that were 25 to 30. So the biggest flocks were 25 to 30, and there were only 2 of those.
I love Dutch hookbill ducks, and I know we're talking about geese, but I want to go back to something you said about colors. Dutch hookbills, you can have a bibbed one, you can have a solid brown one, you can have a black one. If somebody gets 10 Dutch hookbill ducklings, but they're all different colors, is that good for the breed? or should somebody really focus on the bibbed ones?
Well, with the Dutch hookbill, they're not APA standard.
Yeah.
So
So in order
it's
to do that, you would need to have like 50 of one color at a show to get them standardized. Is that correct?
well, it's more complicated than that. It's really quite an endeavor to get a breed accepted. You've got to have, and I don't know the specifics, you'd have to go to the APA website. But my understanding is that you've got to have, first of all, you have to have that color perfected so
Mhm.
that it's not just a fluke, that it'll reproduce predictably and that characteristics are really tight. Because the last thing APA wants to do is allow acceptance of a breed that's not ready for prime time. And then you have to have a certain amount of people showing a certain amount of birds
Yeah.
at X amount of shows. And I know, like the chocolate turkey, they've been working on getting them boarded for years. And I think they're finally coming on maybe this year. I can't remember what the status is of them, but I do know the people that have been working on chocolates have been working hard for at least 5 or 7 years or more, perfecting the color, getting more birds out there, and then getting people to shows. So it's quite involved. You can't just make a color and then get it accepted. It takes a lot more than that. The APA is pretty strict about that. And I think they should, because perfecting a color takes real hard work and a lot of time and a lot of culling. If you
S-
do the work, then yeah, you could possibly do it.
So is the Livestock Conservancy, when we're saving the Dutch hookbill duck, we don't really care about the color as of yet because it's not in the APA?
That's correct. The last category is turkeys. I can say everybody's status quo. They're doing okay. We don't have any one breed that is backsliding. And I think this again is people wanting to raise their own meat. There's also several very large flocks that are being developed in Mississippi that have helped some quite a bit. Breeding numbers are up. And again, Frank Reese has a big role to play in that because he's doing a great job with his birds and cultivating the next generation.
Now, in addition to rare and endangered poultry breeds, the Livestock Conservancy studies and promotes cattle, horse, goat, sheep, pig, rabbit, and donkey breeds. Where
Yes.
can listeners learn more about the Livestock Conservancy?
Get on our website. It's all there. We also have a very active social media accounts, Facebook and Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. We've got a lot of stuff out there. And the other thing is we're an office. So if you have a question and you can't find the answer, pick up the phone and call us. We will answer the phone. We do answer emails. Might not get to it right now, but we make it a point to get back to everybody. We like to talk about animals. It's a real pleasure to do this kind of work and love to talk about it.
Excellent. And the website is livestockconservancy.org.
Correct.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Jeannette, for speaking with us. Our conversation on rare and endangered poultry breeds has been very enlightening.
Yeah, I hope I've helped a bit. I do want to say one more thing, and that's we not only help owners, but we also help breed clubs. And we've just finished up a training webinar series on cultivating leadership for breed organizations. So if you have a breed club and you really want to push it to the next level, it's 9 module series, and we talk about everything from bylaws to cultivating members to communications to registries. And if you really want to take it to the next level, this series is perfect, and it's pertinent for any species. We even have some dog clubs that have taken the series, and it's really good stuff. For breeds that have really functional breed clubs, they don't need us so much. So we want the breed clubs to do really well.
Thank you, Jeannette. That sounds like a great resource. And we thank you, the listener, for joining our podcast and encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and family. To listen to more podcasts and to learn more, visit our website, motherearthnews.com. You can also follow our social media platforms from that link and ask questions for future podcasts. And remember, no matter how brown your thumb is, you can always cultivate kindness.
You've just heard our podcast about poultry breeds and how to support them. You can reach us at podcast@ogdenpubs.com with any comments or suggestions. Our podcast production team includes Jessica Mitchell, John Moore, and Kenny Coogan. Music for this episode is Travel Light by Jason Shaw. This Mother Earth News and Friends podcast is a production of Ogden Publications. Learn more about us at motherearthnews.com. Thanks again to Brinzy, our sponsor for this Mother Earth News and Friends podcast. You too can experience the Brinzy difference and maximize your hatch rates with Brinzy incubators that precisely monitor temperature and humidity and are made of antimicrobial materials. Brinzy ships worldwide and provides stellar customer support to answer all your questions. Hatch your chicks with Brinzy, the leader in innovative incubation research. Learn more at brinzy.com. That's BRINSEA.com. Until next time, don't forget to love your mother.